Hi. So, you know that, I'm going to find my clicker. And this is my last slide, I think. I just want to check before we start. I don't know if we can, thank you. Okay. So you know that feeling you have when you're working and you feel focused without making yourself be focused? And you feel like excited about what you're doing and like you could keep doing it for a long time? That feeling, that's what I call native genius. That's a signal from your native genius. And we actually have way more control over being in that feeling and doing that kind of work than we realize. And whether you're really loving your work or you feel like you're in the total wrong job or you're somewhere in between, there are practices and habits that you can do to be in that place more often. And today, I'm not going to talk about my own life or the research that's behind this. I did a TEDx talk about that, so you could watch that. But what I want to share is what touches me so much about sitting with people and doing this work, and some stories of emerging women that I know. So I'll start with a woman named Gail, and she works for a Fortune 500 tech company. And I asked her, so let's bring up the slide of, so these are the signals that you get. And so I asked her about a moment in time that she felt this. And she said, well, last week I was in this meeting and there was a crisis situation. We brought a bunch of people together and then we did some analysis and we came up with some action items and then we all left. And I said, okay, great. So what was your favorite thing about that? What you were doing. And I said, not what other people were doing, like saying you did a good job, because everybody loves that, right? That's not your native genius. And she said, well, it was a crisis, so everybody was really anxious. And I wanted to kind of let them settle. So I anticipated their needs, and then I answered all those questions first. And then I asked them to do some analysis, and I really wanted them to focus on the future, not so much what was going wrong. And then we all got on the same page and left with action items. And I said, okay, what would be like a quick and dirty soundbite you would use to name that thing you were doing, just so that you could remember? And she goes, well, I think I would call it calm and move along. And she goes, yeah, that's what I was doing. I really just wanted to calm them down and move them along. And then she goes, oh my gosh, I just did that last week with my nephew. He didn't get into this graduate school that just meant the world to him. And I did calm and move along with him. And then the people in the room with her team, goes, yeah, Gail, you know what? You did that. Remember last month when XYZ happened? You totally did that. And you know, one of the things that Brene says is that one of the most difficult things is to show up and be seen for who we are. And one of the things that touches me so much is that when people see themselves. And we all know, like, we're in yoga, we're like in downward dog, or we're in meditation, and the teacher says, feel the truth of who you are. And you're like, okay, I guess I get it. But with what I have found with Native Genius is that people get to witness themselves like in the moment, like, oh, right, I do calm and move along. And so what you might be thinking right now is like, oh, okay, well, I kind of get it. It sounds like passions or strengths or talents, but it's actually much more specific. Let's go to the next slide. So it's a series of bite-sized actions, and they're very, very specific to you, that we could put you anywhere and you'd be doing. Then they feel inconsequential to you. Like Gail would say, well, a crisis situation, of course, that's what anybody would do. But her team is going like, no, it's freaking fantastic what you do. And also, it's not just one thing, it's many things. So, and the other thing is, for me, I ask people soul-searching questions, and you can put me next to a plane, or in bed with my partner at night, or a talk like this, or a workshop, I'll be doing that. I can't not do it. And then, I think I already said that, but it's not one thing, it's many things. So for me, it's different than passions because I'm passionate about healthy food. I will go out of my way to eat it. But it's not my native genius because I don't want to cook it. I don't want to make a menu about it. I don't want to serve it to people, and I don't want to research it. It doesn't have anything to do with my native genius. Native genius is what you can't not do. And sometimes people are like, oh, I kind of get it. But once you start looking for it and you start looking for those signals in yourself and other people around you, then you really start to see it. And it's awesome because you can feel it. So I just want to check, is this clock counting? Okay, it's counting down. Before the clock wasn't on, and now the clock is on. Okay. Here I am. Here y'all are. Okay. So let me tell you another story about a woman named Marika. And are you in here right now? There, she's in the back. Yay. So yesterday I come in and check in, and there's this young woman, and her face is totally lit up. And she says, I saw you speak, and you worked with me a little bit one-on-one, and the most amazing things have happened. And I said, what? Tell me. And she said, well, I'm a research associate at CU Boulder, and I'm an electrical engineer. And when I first met you, I was like, oh, I'm in the total wrong job. I can't stand this. And you asked me about like one thing that I really like to do. And I said, well, I really like getting groups engaged. And then you said, okay, what's one way you could go do that next week? And I was like, well, I could talk to my boss and maybe I could start rearranging team meetings. And I said, okay, go do that. When can you talk to your boss? And she was like, okay, well, tomorrow. And I said, okay, great, go do it. And she said, when you first told me that, I thought, this just sounds like another homework assignment. And like, is really anything gonna come of this? And so she went and talked to her boss, and they changed the way the team meetings work. And now these researchers, these electrical engineers are totally interacting with each other. There's basically 5 things that changed based on her doing this one thing. So her boss is super excited because it's totally not in his native genius. He can't really think of what to do in those situations. Now, I'm making that up, but very likely that's what happens. Because if it's your native genius, you're doing it. He wasn't doing it because it doesn't really occur to him. Okay, and then the other thing that happened is they reconfigured the research lab so that people are sitting in different places, and they reconfigured the office setting and how things are. And then the other thing that changed is now Marika, when she's about to kind of graduate and interview for jobs, she goes in and starts talking about how she gets groups to interact. And she's so excited about sharing this part of her. And you guys, let's give her a hand. It's really scary to take these steps. And it's so much easier to kind of stand off of the playing field and just say, I got to figure it all out first before I get out there, right? Or like, my native genius won't matter. Or, well, everybody loves to do this, but I promise you they don't. I promise you they don't. So I like to think that native genius sometimes is like this little tiny sprout that's coming up. And when it first comes up, it needs like a little stake tied to it, needs a little fence around it. Because it's really scary to take these steps, and it's so much more vulnerable to really put something out there that you love and to go do this thing that you love than it is to, kind of go through the motions with a ho-humness. So what separates native genius from other actions is that there's this innate desire that we don't even know where it comes from, but you can't not do it. So there are 4 practices that you can do. And so in the method that I have created and that I work with, it's all based on these tiny little habits. Because how many of us feel like, okay, well, next month I'm going to carve out a day, and then I'm just going to do it, right? Or I'm going to go to this retreat at the end of the year, and then I think I'll do it. But the sad thing about that is then it's a year later, and you're like, dang it, I never did anything. So the thing I love about these is that one is that research at Stanford says that if you do tiny things, they're going to be much more likely to be successful. And also, if you imagine that you're in a boat and you're headed in a certain course, and then you just change your course like a tiny little amount, then you're going to wind up way over there and not there. And I hear these stories all the time about how much these tiny things have changed for people. And there's something else I want to say about the exponential quality of where innate desire takes us. And so we can see that Marika, already 5 things in 8 months changed for her. There's a client that I work with, her name is Gitali, and she saved her company $25 million a year in the first 18 months of her job. And the research is just, it goes on and on and on. So one of the things that's tough for us is we don't trust pleasure. And it's sad, right? Because we'll take the contracted and we'll take the ho-hum instead, but we don't have to. So let's look at the 4 practices that you can do. So the first thing you can do is just tune in to those feelings. So let's go to the next slide. There should be a 4th one. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so you can just tune into those feelings. So really simply, set an alarm on your phone and make it go off like a couple times a week. And the little message that you write to yourself simply says, did I feel my native genius today? And if so, what was I doing? And then the next thing you can do is ask yourself the favorite thing, like we asked Gail. Then do the one thing. And do the one thing over and over again. You don't have to figure it all out. And the last thing, this one is so important, rely on your tribe. Because you're gonna need the faith that it takes for people to cheerlead you and say, oh my gosh, that's your native genius. And one of the most powerful things, like for example, Gail, when she saw herself, it is so powerful. And the other thing is that people unshame themselves when they start thinking about what's native in them and what's not native in them. And then they're freed up. One of my best teachers when it comes to native genius was this little 5-year-old girl named Sekile. And I used to take these African dance classes. And I wasn't in the kid class, but I was in a multi-generational class. And Sekile was always out there in her little sarong. She was the first one. She was so excited. You could just see innate desire spilling out of her. And she was a really super good 5-year-old dancer. But also the way she moved across the floor was like, she was just full of herself in the best possible way. Without ego. You know, she was just loving what she was doing. And when I sit with people and talk to them about these small moments, these favorite things, I see that. Like Gitali, what she says about her Fortune 500 company, she does a lot of statistical modeling. She says, this place is a paradise when it comes to data. I mean, who says that, right? It has to be her native genius. And we can think, oh, well, that's employable for her, right? But the thing that you have, it always looks like it's nothing until somebody does something with it. And you're like, how did they freaking do that with that? Right? So before you leave the conference, while you're still excited, put one of these 4 actions into motion. Then you'll be much more likely to follow up. We're all here at Emerging Women because it's not easy to live the truth of who we are. So take these little actions and be amazed by what's automatic in you.